we're going to get into a little bit of election politics, electability a little bit. Senator Sanders, the Iowa Democratic Party has declared Hillary Clinton the winner of Monday's Iowa caucuses, narrowest of margins. Today, the Des Moines Register has an editorial that calls for an audit of the results, saying, quote, what happened Monday night at the Democratic caucuses was a debacle, period. The results were too close not to do a complete audit. Senator Sanders, do you accept the idea that Hillary Clinton won Iowa? And do you believe the caucuses are still an open question?
Well, I agree with the Des Moines Register, but let's not blow this out of proportion. This is not like a winner-take-all thing. I think where we now stand, correct me if I'm wrong, you have 22 delegates, I have 20 delegates. We need 2,500 delegates to win the nomination. You know, so this is not the biggest deal in the world. We think, by the way, based on talking to our precinct captains, we may have at least 2 more delegates. What the Des Moines Register said, you know, there were I think there were half a dozen coin flips, a fairly chaotic type of situation. At the end of the day, no matter how it's recounted, it will break roughly even. And by the way, I love and respect the caucus process in Iowa. See, and I don't have to say it because they voted already. And I love New Hampshire, too, because you haven't voted. But look, I think people are blowing this up out of proportion. But I think we need improvements in the process by which results are determined.
Secretary Clinton, will you participate in some sort of audit if that's what the party wants to do? You good with that?
You know, whatever they decide to do, that's fine.
Fair enough. Okay.
All right.
Good. We move on. We're happy with that. We got more questions.
Senator Sanders, in 1964.
Oh, word. See, when you are old, then they go back all these years. All right, what do you got?
In 1964, I heard that the Republicans nominated Barry Goldwater, who was the hero of the conservative movement. He was, however, far to the right of most of that party. In 1972, the Democrats nominated George McGovern, who was a hero of liberals in the anti-war movement, but he was to the left of his party's mainstream. Both of those nominees made activists very excited, and they both got destroyed in the general election.
Right.
Even Democrats who love you worry about your fate in a general election. And I know you have good head-to-head polling numbers against Republican frontrunners right now. We know that. But do you have a general election strategy that is different than the way you're running right now to try to get the nomination?
Well, you know, a general election is different than a primary and caucus process. But let me just say this. In terms of where we are right now, as you've mentioned, Rachel, in a number of national and state, including New Hampshire. For example, the last poll I saw, there may have been a new one, last one I saw here in New Hampshire, a battleground state, had me defeating Trump by 19, the secretary defeating him by 1. There were also pretty large margins in Iowa and Wisconsin. These are polls go up, polls go down. But here's why I think I will be, if nominated, the strongest candidate. Democrats win when there is a large voter turnout, when people are excited, when working people, middle-class people, and young people are prepared to engage in the political process. Republicans win when people are demoralized and you have a small voter turnout, which, by the way, is why they love voter suppression. I believe that our campaign up to now has shown that we can create an enormous amount of enthusiasm from working people, from young people who will get involved in the political process and which will drive us to a very large voter turnout. If there is a large voter turnout, not only do we retain the White House, but I think we regain the Senate, we win governor's chairs up and down the line. So I believe if you want to retain the White House, if you want to see Democrats do well across the board, I think our campaign is the one that creates the large voter turnout and helps us win.
Secretary Clinton, your campaign and surrogates and people who have endorsed you have suggested that, or even said that if Senator Sanders is the nominee, that Democrats will suffer nationwide and the chances will go down of Democrats holding onto the White House. With him here standing next to you, can you tell us whether or not you believe he would win the general election if he were nominated?
I can only tell you what I believe, and that is that I am the strongest candidate to take it to the Republicans and win in November. And I say that with great respect for the campaign that Senator Sanders has been running, I personally am thrilled at the numbers of people, and particularly young people, who are coming to support your campaign. I hope that I will be able to earn their support. They may not support me now, but I support them, and we'll work together. But what I'm concerned about is the views of many Democrats who know their states, who know how hard it is to win a general election. And it also will put whoever the nominee is into the spotlight. I've been vetted. There's hardly anything you don't know about me. And I think it's fair to say that whoever is in that position, Senator Sanders or anyone else who might have run, will face the most withering onslaught. So I think that I am the person who can do all aspects of the job. I think I'm the person best prepared to take the case to the Republicans. And I think that at the end of the day, it's not so much electability, it is who the American people can believe can keep them safe, can get the economy moving again, can get incomes rising, can build on the progressive accomplishments of President Obama. And I think that the coalition that President Obama put together to win twice is a coalition that I can put together and add to. And that's what I'm prepared to do.
Thank you both. We're going to keep on. We're staying on this issue. We're staying on this topic. With Secretary Clinton, just like there are some Democrats that question Senator Sanders' ability in the general election, many Democratic voters that our reporters have been running into in Iowa and New Hampshire, they tell our reporters over and over again they're worried about the emails issue, not because they don't believe your explanation, but because it's a drip, because the cloud is hanging over your head and that it will impact the general election. They see your numbers right now, and they think it's the email issue as to why you're not polling very well. So can you reassure these Democrats that somehow the email issue isn't going to blow up your candidacy if you're the nominee?
Absolutely, I can. You know, before it was emails, it was Benghazi. And the Republicans were stirring up so much controversy about that. And I testified for 11 hours, answered their questions. They basically said, yep, didn't get her, we tried. That was all a political ploy. Now, we had a development in the email matter today when it came out that Secretary Powell and close aides to former Secretary Rice used private email accounts. And now you have these people in the government who are doing the same thing to Secretary Powell and Secretary Rice's aides they've been doing to me, which is that I never sent or received any classified material. They are retroactively classifying it. I agree completely with Secretary Powell, who said today, this is an absurdity. And so I think the American people will know it's an absurdity. I have absolutely no concerns about it whatsoever.
All right, Madam Secretary, there is an open FBI investigation into this matter about how you may have handled classified material. Are you 100% confident that nothing is going to come of this FBI investigation?
I am 100% confident. This is a security review that was requested. It is being carried out. It will be resolved. But I have to add, if there's going to be a security review about me, there's going to have to be security reviews about a lot of other people, including Republican office holders, because we've got this absurd situation of retroactive classifications. Honest to goodness. This just beggars the imagination. So I have absolutely no concerns about it, but we've got to get to the bottom of what's really going on here, and I hope that will happen.
Well, Senator Sanders, you famously at the first debate said you didn't give a darn about her emails. I think you used another quote. You're right. I'm trying to. It's a family hour still right now. After 11 o'clock, I'll say it the other way. And you mostly have refrained from commenting on it, but recently you called it a very serious issue, and then the other day you said, well, she's getting slapped with the email controversy. How are you feeling about these darn emails now?
I am feeling exactly the way I felt at the first debate. There's a process on the way. I will not politicize it.
Okay.
Senator Sanders.
Senator, thank you.
And by the way, And by the way, if I may, the Secretary probably doesn't know that there's not a day that goes by when I am not asked to attack her on that issue, and I have refrained from doing that, and I will continue to refrain from doing that.
Senator Sanders, thank you. Senator, in December, one of your campaign staffers was fired from your campaign for taking voter data, essentially, from the Clinton campaign. You apologized for that when the incident was made public. Your campaign has now been criticized for its operatives essentially impersonating culinary union members wearing union pins in Nevada. And the Nashua Telegraph has complained recently that you falsely implied in an advertisement that they had endorsed you when they did not. None of these issues, obviously, is the end of the world, but they all are of a piece. Are you, in some sense, losing control of your campaign?
Not losing control of our campaign. You know, we have hired a whole lot of people in a rapid way, and I am familiar with the first two instances, and they are unacceptable, and we have apologized and dealt with that. In terms of the last one, as I understand it, we did not suggest that we had the endorsement of a newspaper. Newspapers who make endorsements also say positive things about other candidates. And to the best of my knowledge, that is what we did. So we never said that a newspaper endorsed us that did not. What we did say is, blah, 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 was said by the newspaper.
Just to follow up on that, the title of the ad in question was endorsement.
But that was only that was not to be on television. That's an important point. That was just something, as the Secretary knows, you put titles on ads and you send them out. But there was no word in that ad, none, that said that those newspapers had endorsed us.
Secretary Clinton, do you want 30 seconds on this issue?
No.
All right. And with that, we will take a break.
We'll take a break.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the University of New Hampshire and the Democratic candidates debate. Secretary Clinton, on the issue of the death penalty. Here in New Hampshire, the one person who is on death row is there for killing a police officer. It's a crime that has caused anguish in this state, both among death penalty opponents and death penalty supporters. The last time I had the chance to talk with you on this issue on the death penalty, you said that capital punishment has a place in a very few federal cases, but you also said you would breathe a sigh of relief if the Supreme Court abolished the death penalty nationwide. Tonight, do you still support capital punishment, even if you do so reluctantly?
Yes, I do. And, you know, what I hope the Supreme Court will do is make it absolutely clear that any state that continues capital punishment either must meet the highest standards of evidentiary proof, of effective assistance of counsel, or they cannot continue it. Because that, to me, is the real dividing line. I have much more confidence in the federal system, and I do reserve it for particularly heinous crimes in the federal system, like terrorism. I have strong feelings about that. I thought it was appropriate after a very thorough trial that Timothy McVeigh received the death penalty for blowing up the federal building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people, including 19 children in a daycare center. So I do, for very limited, particularly heinous crimes, believe it is an appropriate punishment. But I deeply disagree with the way that too many states still are implementing it. So if it were possible to separate out the federal from the state system by the Supreme Court, that would, I think, be an appropriate outcome.
Senator Sanders, you have singled out the death penalty and Senator Clinton's support for the death penalty as an issue that makes it hard to consider her a progressive in your mind. But
look, I hear what the Secretary said, and I understand it. Look, there are... All of us know that we have seen in recent years horrible, horrible, horrible crimes. And it's hard to imagine how people can bomb and kill 168 people in Oklahoma City or do the Boston Marathon bombing. But this is what I believe, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, too many innocent people, including minorities, African Americans, have been executed when they were not guilty. That's number one. So we have to be very careful about making sure about that. But second of all, and maybe in a deeper reason, of course there are barbaric acts out there, but in a world of so much violence and killing, I just don't believe that government itself should be part of the killing. So when somebody commits any of these terrible crimes that we have seen, you lock them up and you toss away the key. They're never going to get out. But I just don't want to see government be part of killing. That's all.
But another issue related to the proper role of government, and in this case, specifically the role of government between the federal government and the states. I want to talk for a moment about the issue of Flint, Michigan. On the Flint lead poisoning disaster, you have both been highly critical of Governor Rick Snyder of Michigan and how the state in Michigan both caused the lead poisoning problem and has not acted fast enough to fix it. You have both been outspoken on that. The fact is, Michigan, though, has not fixed it. There is no door-to-door delivery of clean water in Flint even today. Not a single lead pipe has been replaced in Flint even today. If the state is failing, would you, Secretary Clinton, would you as president order a federal response to get it right over and above the wishes of the state?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, Rachel, you and I have talked about this before. I thank you for going to Flint to hold that town hall. I will be in Flint at the mayor's invitation on Sunday to get a in-depth briefing about what is and is not happening. This is an emergency. Every day that goes by that these people, particularly the children, are not tested so we can know what steps must be taken to try to remediate the effects of the poisoning that they have been living with is a day lost in a child's life. And I know from the work that I've done over so many years, lead, the toxic nature of lead, can affect your brain development, your body development, your behavior. So I absolutely believe that what is being done is not sufficient. We need to be absolutely clear about everything that should be done from today to tomorrow into the future to try to remedy the terrible burden that the people of Flint are bearing. And that includes fixing their pipes. It includes guaranteeing whatever health care and educational embellishments they may need going forward. And I think the federal government has ways where it can build a state of Michigan. If Michigan won't do it, there have to be ways that we can begin to move and then make them pay for it and hold them accountable.
Senator Sanders, are there things the federal government could be doing? President Obama could be ordering done right now in Flint, Michigan that are not being done that you as president would do. Absolutely.
I mean, I think the secretary described the situation appropriately. You know, I don't go around asking for governors' resignations every day. In fact, I think I never have in my life. But I did ask for the resignation of Governor Snyder because his irresponsibility was so outrageous. What we are talking about are children being poisoned. That's what we're talking about. We don't know. No one knows for sure because they haven't even done the appropriate studies. But there's no question that kids' intellectual development may have been impacted. We don't know how many thousands. The idea that there has not been a dramatic response is beyond comprehension. And when you have one of the, I think, significant public health crises of recent years, of course the federal government comes in. And of course the federal government says, you're not going to be poisoning little kids and impacting their entire lives. Last point on this, and I suspect the secretary agrees. One wonders if this were a white suburban community, what kind of response there would have been. Flint, Michigan is a poor community. It is disproportionately African American and minority. And what has happened there is absolutely unacceptable.
Senator, all right. Thank you.
Secretary Clinton, let me turn to the issue of trade. In the 90s, you supported NAFTA, but you opposed it when you ran for president in 2008. As Secretary of State, you supported TPP, and then, which of course is that trade agreement with a lot of Asian countries, but you now oppose it as you make your second bid for president. If elected, should Democrats expect that once you're in office, you will then become supportive of these trade agreements again?
You know, Chuck, I've only had responsibility for voting for trade agreements as a senator. And I voted against a multinational trade agreement when I was a senator, the CAFTA agreement, because I did not believe it was in the best interests of the workers of America, of our incomes, and I opposed it. I did hope that the TPP negotiated by this administration would put to rest a lot of the concerns that many people have expressed about trade agreements. And I said that I was holding out that hope that it would be the kind of trade agreement that I was looking for. I waited until it had actually been negotiated because I did want to give the benefit of the doubt to the administration. Once I saw what the outcome was, I opposed it. Now, I have a very clear view about this. We have to trade with the rest of the world. We are 5% of the world's population. We have to trade with the other 95%. And trade has to be reciprocal. That's the way the global economy works. But we have failed to provide the basic safety net support that American workers need in order to be able to compete and win in the global economy. So it's not just what's in the trade agreement that I'm interested in. I did help to renegotiate the trade agreement that we inherited from President Bush with Korea. We got the UAW on board because of changes we made. So there are changes that I believe would make a real difference if they could be achieved, but I do not currently support it as it is written.
Well, Senator Sanders, I know you want to respond on this. You have never supported a trade deal since you've been in Congress.
Absolutely.
But if you do that as president, how are you not essentially letting China, who will do all of these deals around the world, how are you going to prevent China from essentially setting the rules of trade for the world?
Chuck, I believe in trade, but I do not believe in unfettered free trade. I believe in fair trade, which works for the middle class and working families of this country and not just large multinational corporations. I was not only in opposition to NAFTA, and this is an area where the Secretary and I have disagreements. I was not only in opposition to NAFTA, I was on the picket line in opposition to NAFTA because I understood. I don't think this is really rocket science. We heard all of the people tell us how many great jobs would be created. I didn't believe that for a second, because I understood what the function of NAFTA, CAFTA, PNTR with China and the TPP is to say to American workers, hey, you are now competing against people in Vietnam who make 56 cents an hour minimum wage. I don't want American workers to compete against people making 56 cents an hour. I don't want companies shutting down in America, throwing people out on the street, moving to China, and bringing their products back into this country. So do I believe in trade? Of course I believe in trade. But the current trade agreements over the last 30 years were written by corporate America, for corporate America, resulted in the loss of millions of decent-paying jobs. 60,000 factories in America lost since 2001, millions of decent-paying jobs, and also a downward spiral, a race to the bottom, where employers say, hey, you don't want to take a cut in pay? We're going to China. Workers today are working longer hours for low wages. Trade is one of the reasons for that.
All right. Thank you both. We're going to sneak in one more break here, and when we come back, we'll